68% of Americans, last they asked, wanted an immediate ceasefire and an end to the genocide, where over 60% want a shutdown of all military aid to Israel. This is astounding. This is not so much a problem of a misinformed public. This is a problem of a public which is denied representation. We have an anti-democratic government, is what we have, both political parties. And as said earlier, Trump is a symptom. He is not the disease itself. He is part of the disease, but he is not the driver of that disease. He is a symptom of it. That disease is wreaking havoc on every dimension of our lives. It was, some months ago, it was said to be over 60% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. Well, now that is over 2/3. It's now over 66% of Americans. Over half of Americans are now struggling to pay their rent, paying more than 30 or even 50% of their monthly income just to keep a roof over their heads. Meanwhile, the rate of homelessness is absolutely unprecedented. Last year, the number of homeless increased by 18% in 1 year alone. That's on top of a 12% increase the year before. 100 million people are strapped in medical debt, 44 million in student debt. Half of youth say that they are hopeless about the future. 1 in 4 have considered harming themselves within 2 weeks of the poll alone because of how desperate they are about the condition of their lives. This says really more than anything that what is being imposed on us by the parties of oligarchy, by the corporate duopoly, is absolutely unsustainable, unforgivable, and it will not stand. Do not be fooled for a minute. You know, we've all been kind of knocked off of our feet by this incredibly rapid assault, one thing after another. We're not sure how critical each attack is. Where are we to turn our attention before we've observed, before we have even come to terms with the last hit? There are 5 more the next day. So this is really designed to keep us on our back feet, to keep us basically falling over. But in fact, do not be fooled into thinking that there is support for the oligarch agenda. Elon Musk himself, who people initially were favorable towards, even within the Republican Party now, he has become an absolute anathema. And there's overwhelming disapproval of Elon Musk and of his having any influence whatsoever in our government. The same is true for Trump's other policies. There was support. It wasn't overwhelming, but there was support across the board. Now that has pretty much gone, except on the issue of deportations, where the Democrats shared with the Republicans this pack of lies that really persuaded the American people, shamefully, into thinking that immigrants are the cause of greater crime, are the cause of the drugs coming into this country. It's actually the opposite. Immigrants are far safer, are far more community, family, and job oriented. Immigrants are not the problem. The problem is the US policies that have created wave after wave of migration. And that is where the migration crisis must be solved. The most critical thing we can do to solve the migration crisis is to simply stop causing it in the first place through endless wars, regime change, through economic sanctions that are driving people here in desperation. And you'll notice that while Trump did not talk whatsoever, not in his inauguration and not since, has not talked about the real crises facing American people, of homelessness, of the lack of health care, of the skyrocketing cost of housing, of debt. While Trump hasn't talked about it, the Democrats don't talk about it either. And Kamala Harris, in her campaign, had absolutely no solutions to offer. And when she was asked, you know, what was she going to do? Well, she was basically going to do more of Joe Biden, except that she would be different by appointing a Republican to her cabinet. That's how she was going to distinguish herself. Donald Trump, you know, has been overwhelmingly funded by billionaires. And the statistic to drive that home is the fact that 44% of the money supporting Trump's campaign came from 10 people. Donald Trump represents 10 people and a few others. That is what this is about. This is about a massive propaganda campaign. This is about manufactured consent. Do not believe for a minute that the American public is being fooled. And I will say that the latest polls showed that there is no longer majority support. Initially, it was, you know, modest support across the board for all of what Trump was doing. Now he has basically lost that support, and he is in the negative. He's actually in the disapproval rating now on everything except for deportation, where there is still, you know, a lot of lasting confusion after years of bipartisan propaganda. But on all the other issues, on tariffs, on the taxes and so on, there is no longer support on Elon Musk. There is no longer support for the Trump agenda. And in fact, he is running in the negatives now. He had the worst average approval, the worst average polling of all presidents since the Second World War. There is not support. And the second worst was, you know who? It was Joe Biden, which tells you that both of these parties are not representing us. They are not representing the American people who are hungry, who are desperate for change. A couple more quick mentions. There's so much outrage right now about the proposed Trump cuts, particularly to Medicaid and to food stamps, to SNAP. But actually the cuts that he is proposing are smaller than the cuts that were made by Joe Biden during his presidency. Shame. It was 24 million people who were thrown off of Medicaid by Joe Biden. And it was approximately 4.5 million people were thrown back into poverty after Joe Biden's cuts to SNAP. And further, Joe Biden ended the pause on student debt payments, which impoverished millions of people and continue to impoverish millions of people. There was no need for him to do that. He did that purely on his own voluntary basis to throw American youth and Americans of all ages, actually, back into student debt poverty. So shame on all of them. And same agendas exactly. And another fascinating statistic came out just the other day, that the Democratic Party now has the lowest public approval ranking since the question has ever been asked. They now stand at approximately 31% and massive disapproval. So this is, above all, do not let this emergency be hijacked, because that is what they are trying to do right now. That is what Bernie Sanders is doing. That is what AOC is doing. That's what all of them are doing, is saying, see, look how bad Trump is, put us back in power. But what exactly are they doing? What they're doing, I think, is best summarized by Hakeem Jeffries, if you saw the clip of him that went viral, asking, well, what is it we can do? I'm trying to figure out what we can do. It's their government. That is the problem. It's not their government, it's our government. And we need to throw all the bums out.